Hello everyone and welcome to the congregation. I'm your host Ryan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, and yeah, this is our maiden voyage, our inaugural episode. So what is this show exactly? Well, I'll start by putting it down to just kind of brass tacks and bullet points here. This is basically a letter writing show, or a write-in show, where basically you can send in your letters for anything around the gaming industry, or gaming adjacent, and we'll read them out on the air here and create some civil discourse. What I mean by that is obviously I'll give my opinion on your letter and open up invitations for other watchers to send in their letters in response. So why this particular format for the show? Well, from a personal standpoint, I find that when you're writing a letter as opposed to a social media comment, you're more likely to take time to self-reflect a bit and actually put a little bit more than you intended. Commenting on social media, Facebook, sending a tweet, you're more likely to be impulsive, put what you first thought down, click send, then move on. But when you're writing a letter, you'll look over it before you'll send typically, and you'll see little things that you thought you put in, but perhaps you didn't, or you'll recall something else that you originally completely forgot about. So it's just a good way to definitely get your point across about whatever it is you want to discuss. So a personal example for me is a few months ago, maybe a bit longer now, time's funny in 2021, I was commenting on a Facebook post about Cyberpunk, and there was a bit of a controversy around launch, not because of the bugs and stuff like that, as a lot of us are aware of, but there was a segment in the game reported which was actually causing epileptic seizures. Now, I was making a lengthy Facebook comment about this, basically explaining that it's a legal issue at this point, and it was fairly long, quite detailed. It took me a couple of minutes, and then someone just commented immediately after saying, "My friend lawyer, he says no, it's not." Just didn't even bother to actually interact with the post. He just Anyway, so from that experience and a few other experiences that I've personally had online, it created this kind of gap, and I realised that there isn't, to my knowledge anyway, there's not really a show like this on YouTube or even on Twitch. So the idea here is to create a little community where we can have this kind of civil discourse where, I mean, don't get me wrong, if you write in and I don't agree, I will let you know, but I won't be dismissive. I will try and see it from both sides. And even when we're discussing certain topics that we agree on, let's pick one at random, loot boxes, although you and I are probably likely to disagree with loot boxes, we can take a few moments to try and see it from the publisher's perspective or the game studio's perspective and why they feel it's good or needed. Be a tough call in that example, but that's kind of what we're going for. Now, this show is intended to be live streamed when it gets underway. Now, obviously, with it being our first, not only show, but our first video on YouTube, we have no likes, no subscribers, so doing it live at this point would be kind of empty and kind of pointless. For me as well, it's my first video, so it's already a little bit nerve-wracking just doing it offline. Already had a few false starts for this video. But it is intended to be live streamed. Now, also, it's a letter writing show without any letters because no one's sent any in yet. So for the first couple of episodes, I think I'll just pick a couple of topics at random and try and find an article that reflects it and still go over it in the same way I would do a letter when they start coming in. So before we get into that, I just want to say a few things in regards to time capsuling. So this has been filmed 18 months into the pandemic, roughly. I've not had a haircut in 18 months. I've barely trimmed the beard or anything like that, so if I'm looking a bit dishevelled and you're watching this a few years after the fact, then you'll remember this year very fondly, no doubt, and the year before more so. Also, for this original episode, I went and bought a nice little pin-on mic here, but lo and behold, obviously it's gone missing. So I'm using the webcam's native built-in microphone there. So I tested it beforehand. It seems alright, but I will apologise for the audio quality. And maybe, you know, if this does become a success, I can look back in a few months' time and weigh up the difference between the two of them. But yeah, I guess with that, we will get on to our topics for the start of our main show, and we're going to go over 3 topics today. Just a little deviation in the format of the show and how it's going to play out for at least the first couple of dozen episodes. Just off the top, I will talk about like one of the biggest things that's happened in the past week, so I do intend to do this weekly. And obviously, video games is a lot of movement all the time, and I can't cover everything, so I will just pick one of the biggest ones to do off the top, unless someone writes in about something that happened that week, in which case that will obviously take the place. We'll then move on to some of your letters and get them all read out, have a little discussion about those. And then towards the end, when we're live, we will jump into the chats and have a look at the comments and stuff like that. But these first few couple of offline episodes, I think what we'll do is we'll go back to the week before's video and kind of go over some of those comments there and treat them as we would live comments. So, the first thing I thought we'd talk about is the new Nintendo Switch OLED. Something that we all kind of seen coming, but maybe not in the exact specifications we thought it would. And I did find a nice little article from Daniel Van Boom at CNET. Now, obviously this is an article from a publication, so I'm only doing excerpts here, but I'm going to link the full article in the description below. And it is just excerpts, so I do recommend you go and read the full thing. There's a nice little anecdote about his friends inquiring about it with him. So let me just read this out here quickly. The new Switch will be 0.8 inches bigger than the regular Switch's 6.2 inch, with deeper backs and better contrast. Other touted features include an improved kickstand and enhanced audio. In other words, it's anything but a generational leap. These modest improvements come with a modest price hike. The Switch Deluxe launches at $350 on October 8th, at just $50 more than the non-OLED Switch. This seems fair, but the online reaction hasn't been kind. That's because, like me, like Daniel, it appears most people anticipated more. Yeah, no hell. An upgraded Nintendo Switch was first reported by Bloomberg some 11 months ago, long enough for imaginations to flourish and expectations to soar. And those inflated expectations are the issue here, not the new and slightly improved Switch. If it was a surprise announcement, gamers would have met the new edition with a polite, fair enough. It's only against the hopes of a substantial hardware improvement and existing owners wanting a decent reason to upgrade that the reaction becomes Nintendo ruined everything. Don't get me wrong, if I had my way, if Daniel had his way, Nintendo would have had a Switch Pro with 4K resolution, a new graphics chip, and a better battery life. I'd also fix the ongoing drift issues with the console's Joy-Cons and its lack of Bluetooth support, which is absurd at this point. But if the Nintendo swolled, nice one, Nintendo isn't trying to get my dollar, Daniel's dollar. There are millions of people who care about 4K gaming, but there are billions who play games that don't. Like all the aforementioned renovating models, the OLED Switch has 2 goals. It serves die-hard fans, numbering in their millions, who flock to buy any new Nintendo console. Second, and more importantly, it provides an extra option to people who haven't bought a Switch yet. The console sold over 84 million units since 2017, about 16 million shy of becoming the best-selling Nintendo home console ever. But the company isn't scrapping the barrel for more buys, as there are hundreds of millions of potential sales yet to be realised. And it's to these whom Nintendo are appearing by adding the Switch hardware range. It's a push for those who've been on the fence since 2017, or those who have rekindled their love of gaming during the pandemic. So that was Daniel over at CNET. Again, please go and check out the full article, link in the description below. And I think Daniel really hits the nail on the head in regards to when he's talking about if it was just announced and there was no Bloomberg leak 11 months ago, it would be par for the course for Nintendo. If you look back at all of their hardware dating back to the Game Boy, it's always been incremental upgrades during the product life cycle of any of their console generations. It's never been about taking the big leaps every couple of years, you know. Again, it's not been out that long. 2017, I mean, yeah, it's still 4 years. It feels a lot sooner than that. I remember when the Switch came out and I was kind of having a little joke about it because I was on the PlayStation 4 at the time, and I kept saying kids are going to lose those Joy-Cons. They're going to get snapped, they're going to get lost, and I thought it would just be this big sort of akin to when you're hearing about kids spending all their parents' money to buy V-Bucks or FIFA points. I thought there would be that kind of social media activity around how often they get lost or broken. Now, half right here, Daniel did say something about Joy-Con drift, which we're all at this point too familiar with, to the point where it's just a common everyday background mention at this point. But yeah, I think, like, taking a step back, if we had a look at what Nintendo did previously, this was very easy to call out beforehand here. And again, I think it's just a case of we all got on that great hype train, and it's not to dismiss the Bloomberg article from 11 months ago. I think Nintendo very much were planning some kind of 4K output. That's not to say it was going to have improved graphics and stuff like that, because then you get the issues of compatibility with their older games, and then you've got the dev kits, and you go the developers. So I don't think it was going to be a massive hardware shift. I think it would have that good upscaling to 4K, and you know, Nintendo first party games would look very nice, very sleek in 4K, upscaled. Talk about your Super Mario's, your Pokemons. They would. There's just really those bright colours as well. The OLED is definitely, it will be welcomed, don't get me wrong, but as both Daniel and the internet said, it's not enough for me to go take my Switch down there, trade it in, and buy one to replace it. Especially if you're playing on a TV most of the time. I think if you're a frequent commuter and you have it undocked quite a lot of the time, then yeah, I could maybe see myself doing that. But the fact is I work from home, so I've not had my Switch undocked in a long time. In fact, I've not had my Switch on in a long time since I got my Xbox Series S not too long ago. But yeah, with that down and out of the way, I think we'll move on to one of our two miscellaneous topics for today. Now, because this is our inaugural show, and you don't know who I am except my name, I'm just some random with a webcam, I thought over the next couple of episodes I would use the faux letters to kind of tell you about my favourite games, the games that shaped me when I was growing up, mainly around the PS2 era. I played games before the PS2, but PS2 was when it became a hobby, as you could say, and not just something I put on to pass the time when I was younger, something my parents sat me down to keep me occupied when I was younger. So I think firstly we'll talk about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This is an article from Game, the retailer here in the UK. It's an uncredited article, so whoever wrote it, I'm afraid I can't give them credit. But again, I'll put the link in the description, and this is the full article, but obviously you can go check out the main article for their screenshots, etc. And who knows, it might have just been a website glitch. Maybe they have credited the writer after the fact. So I'm going to read this out first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my relationship with Tony Hawk. When it was announced that Vicarious Visions would be developing full remakes for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, the internet exploded. Hardcore gamers and casual players alike were thrilled that the series was coming back, and many took to social media and message boards to share their favourite memories of the original games. For many, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was a social game. Despite it being primarily a single-player experience, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and its sequels took inspiration from classic arcade games, placing emphasis on high scores, leading the game as a distinctly competitive quality. At the height of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater's popularity, it was not uncommon for players old and young to crowd around a CRT TV, passing the controller back and forth as they attempted to beat their friends' high scores. Horse. The brilliance of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater lay in its balance, if you'll excuse the pun. The gameplay was just simple enough that beginners could easily pick it up and start pulling off tricks, but complex enough that you could waste away hours trying to perfect a single level. This balance also extended to its realism. All the staple tricks were present: ollies, kickflips, manuals, etc. And all of these moves could be strung together in long and impressive combos far beyond what's possible on a real skateboard. This meant that beginners could get an authentic skating experience, while more dedicated players could string together some really creative trick sequences. It helped that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was dripping in authenticity. Neversoft's early games absolutely nailed that early 2000s skater aesthetic, from the blaring pop-pop soundtrack to the branded clothing that many real-life pro skaters would rock. Beyond the sights and sounds, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater also evoked the culture of skateboarding, from the rebellious attitude to the unapologetically silly sense of humour. As the sport of skating grew, so did Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, as an ever-expanding cast of pro skaters joined the ranks. Naturally, many fans took up skating in real life as a direct result of their affection for the Tony Hawk's games, this writer included. Again, I wish I knew your name. Although few would reach the heights of the Birdman himself, who is now the foremost famous skateboarder in the world, many would come away from the era with fond memories of roaming the streets with friends, trying and often failing to pull off their favourite tricks from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Could the upcoming remakes inspire a whole new generation of daring teens to take up the board? Well, that article was from the 30th of July 2020, so about a month, I think, before the Tony Hawk's remakes came out. I'll tell you what, those remakes were, like, it blew me out of the water. I was not expecting anything, like, it looked the part, but I didn't think it was going to feel the part. And sucker I am, I paid for it day one. I pre-ordered it, in fact. I don't pre-order games. In fact, the only time I condone pre-ordering is when you want to play it at midnight, and this was a rare exception where I did want to play this at midnight. Because again, it looked beautiful, but I was like, this is too good to be true. This can't be the real deal. Vicarious Visions pulled it off. Lord knows how. They must have had some old Neversoft people in there, but it felt just like the old games. Now, it didn't necessarily feel like 1 and 2 specifically, because they were from the PS1 era, but they absolutely sort of 3 and 4 took those core mechanics from 3 and 4, including revert, and put it into Tony Hawk's 1 and 2, and you would not know if I sat you down in front of Tony Hawk 1 on the PS1. Anyway, a little quick trip down memory lane with that one. But no, Tony Hawk's during sort of those early millennium years, it really was a core staple of the PS2, and even going into the PS3 and 360 era, along with another game we'll talk about not too far ahead. But no, when the writer there was talking about the soundtrack was a key ingredient. It's really what sealed the aesthetic and the feeling of gaming around the time, because, you know, the way that skaters would promote themselves back then, and even still today, is with skating videos. They would shoot themselves sort of like music videos, and the music choice, you know, was really synonymous with, you know, their skating style. So the music choice that they had to pick for the Tony Hawk's games was quintessential. And if you look at interviews from bands from those early millennium years, a lot of them got their first public recognition from Tony Hawk's games. They weren't, Neversoft weren't going out and looking for the big bands, although there were some well-known names in there. A lot of bands were putting their songs in games for the first time back then, and a lot of them got exposure through video games, not just Tony Hawk, but anything else around those times. So, for me personally, what I recall about Tony Hawk is that the games very quickly, due to the popularity, became almost yearly releases, one of an early example along there with the original FIFA games and things like that. And they would always come out around my birthday, either a few weeks before, in which case I knew what I was getting. And I think a few times it came out just after my birthday, and I'd get a gift card for a local retailer and go pick up myself when it became available. But that was very much when I knew gaming was a hobby and not just not just something that was passing. I would even shock my mum by going downstairs later that evening on my birthday, and I'd say completed it, and she'd be like, "I just paid £50 for that." I'm sorry, mum, completed it. It was good, but obviously Tony Hawk had a lot of replayability. The writer there also talks about the competitiveness of Tony Hawk. It was the first game I ever played online on a PS2 with the old network adapter you'd have to stick on the back there. I always thought people were cheating because when you're balancing on a rail, you'll wobble side to side, and you wouldn't see other players doing that. Obviously, after the fact, I know looking back, that's just the way the games were programmed. Obviously, on the other players' ends, they were actually balancing, but it looked like they had perfect balance online. So that was always a point of contention when I was younger. And offline multiplayer, who can forget Horse? I actually thought Horse was something created by Tony Hawk, but I think it's something that, kids playing basketball or soccer and etc. I've actually been playing for a long time. Similar how we've got Kirby over here in Scotland. I won't go into that. But no, Tony Hawk, absolutely. I have to say, it did kind of reach that point of stagnation towards the end. A lot of tonal shifts as well, Tony Hawk's Underground came out, and it wasn't totally serious, but did have a kind of grittiness. It had the usual silly goals and stuff like that, but it had a genuine storyline that did border on the unrealistic. But then Tony Hawk's Underground 2 came out, World Tour, and Jackass was the rage, so naturally Bam Margera's front and centre, and yeah, then it got a bit silly. And then you got games like American Wasteland and stuff like that, and yeah, them were really kind of bordering on. But then I think it changed around maybe 2004, 5, when Skate came out from EA. Skate was more of a skating simulator. It wasn't aiming for the arcade style that Tony Hawk was. It was very much you had to. I mean, if you've played the games, you'll know, but you use your analog sticks to replicate the way you have to flick your feet to flip the board, do your ollies and your kick flips and what have you. So I think as Tony Hawk's went into things like Proving Ground, they kind of tried to be a bit more in those lines while still catering to the arcade style. And I think that's tonality is kind of what led it to its end. Not just that, but they were starting to chase trends towards the end. As sales dropped down, they're like, right, how can we reinvigorate this? And you had the Guitar Hero games and peripheral-based gaming coming in. So they were like, right, Tony Hawk Ride, let's make a plastic skateboard. And at that point, you just know it was dead in the water. I had no intention of picking up Ride. I think I had a quick shot of it once. It got traded in at my work. I used to work for a retailer here in the UK. And yeah, I felt like I was going to break it. Not because I was a heavy set boy, and still am a heavy set boy, but it was just cheaply made, basically. It felt cheaply made. I'm sure a lot of time and innovation went into designing it, but I'm just saying what the end product felt like to me. But yeah, Tony Hawk, I still go back and play Tony Hawk quite frequently. It's one of the main reasons I've still got my PS2 and my PS3 60GB. It's one of the only PS3s that were backward compatible, if I recall. I'm surprised it's still ticking along, to be honest with you. But no, I've got some of the PS2 ones and the PS1 back there. To be honest, I don't revisit the 360 PS3 era very often. American Wasteland, I think, was kind of the height of that part, and everything after that, Project 8, Proving Ground, honestly, I can't remember them, to be honest. I mean, it might have been the binge mentality, because again, I'd buy it and I'd have it done at least a few days afterwards. Not 100% all secrets, I just mean like getting to end progression. But yeah, Tony Hawk. I really hope that Vicarious Visions are hoping to continue their little remake period, because I'd love to see Tony Hawk 3 and 4. In fact, better yet, and I wish they did this, I wish that the remake that they just made was purely they just called it Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And almost like a live service, every 6 months to a year, they release an update which or a paid expansion, what have you, where they put in another game. So if they just started it with just the Tony Hawk's 1 stuff, that would have been great. And then 6 months later, add in Tony Hawk 2, 6 months later, Tony Hawk 3, and so on and so forth, until you've got something similar to the Master Chief Collection, which just one game with all of the entries there. And yeah, I'd pay money for that. It would just be nice just to have it all in kind of one place, you know. Kind of like what Destiny 2's doing. They've abandoned the idea of Destiny 3, and they're just continuously updating to almost a detriment. I suppose we'll talk about that at a later stage. But no, Tony Hawk, absolutely hands down one of my favourite series ever. So, with that out of the way, we'll go on to our third subject here. And this one's actually fairly related to Tony Hawk, and it is a longer article I'm going to read out here, so I will stop incrementally throughout the article here. This one's called The History of Music Games. It was written by Justin Davis on IGN on the 22nd of October 2014. Now, if you know anything about music games, you'll know exactly what developer I'm about to speak about. Harmonix. And Harmonix are another one of my favourite studios. I have somewhat fallen out of love with them of late, but I'll talk about that at a later point. 2 seconds. Oh. So, again, this is Justin Davis over at IGN. The oldest musical instruments date back around 40,000 years. Humans have been rocking out for a very long time. It would seem rhythm is in our blood. It's no wonder we have music-based video games. In 2001, a little-known company called Harmonix released Frequency for PlayStation 2, with a follow-up called Amplitude in 2003. While early music games had offered their own take on the user interface, perhaps no other games made tapping buttons in time with music as intuitive as Frequency and Amplitude. In these games, the notes travelled down a three-dimensional path towards the player, and you would have to press the buttons when they reached a certain point near the screen. The games were highly intuitive, and it didn't hurt that the soundtracks were wicked catchy. After Frequency and Amplitude, Harmonix made a PS2 singing game called Karaoke Revolution. This 2003 game came with a microphone and used a side-scrolling meter to grade your performance as you belted out vocals in real time, something no other game had done before. Harmonix Frequency, Amplitude, and Karaoke Revolution laid the groundwork for music games that would become household names in just a few short years. All of the elements of the next major revolution in games existed in those 3 titles, with one exception. In 2005, the music game industry was pedaling on just fine, but it hadn't produced any blockbuster hits. All of that was about to change with the release of Guitar Hero for PlayStation 2. So I will just kind of go back to talk about Amplitude for a moment here. Amplitude, hands down, was a repeat player for me. Even after I completed it 100%, all difficulties, I would go back to the start and just start it again. It is very similar to Rock Band in the sense that it'll come down like Justin was just describing there. 3 buttons, square, triangle, and circle, and you would basically just play Guitar Hero with these 3 little buttons here. And what was really good about it was multi-genred, so it had everything from David Bowie, Garbage, and even Slipknot in some of the harder difficulties. And unfortunately, they did reboot the game a couple of years ago. They launched it on Kickstarter because they didn't think it was going to be too financially viable. And thankfully it met its funding goal. I even backed it. In fact, it's the only game I've backed on Kickstarter now that I think about it. But I have to say I was disappointed because the music choice was all electronic. And I like electronic music, don't get me wrong, but I really like the variety of Amplitude. And I will say I do lean on more the rock and heavy metal side of things. So, by all means, definitely give Amplitude a try. It's probably quite cheap now, because it has been a few years after the fact. Also, it's just nice to see those early roots, and oh yeah, I can see how this and that went into Guitar Hero later on. Back to the article. The company that sparked the fire was Red Octane, a game accessory maker that wanted to make a guitar-based music game for PlayStation 2. Impressed by both frequency and amplitude, Red Octane's upper brass approached Harmonix to collaborate on the new game. Red Octane would make the guitar controller, while Harmonix would build the software. Needless to say, Harmonix agreed. When Guitar Hero came out in November 2005, there wasn't anything like it on the market. It was an immediate hit with critics, in large part because it was so intuitive. It took many of the elements from Harmonix's previous titles, but elegantly paired them with the guitar peripheral. This might seem like a minor enhancement, but it turns out that when you strum a guitar controller to Black Sabbath's Iron Man, the experience coalesces into something greater than the sum of its parts. Yes, it does. Playing Guitar Hero delivered an experience unlike anything you would get by tapping buttons on a standard controller. It actually made you feel like a rock star. When you strapped that guitar on and pressed the fret buttons in time when the notes cascading down your screen, Guitar Hero connected you to those early humans playing music for 40,000 years ago. It also made you feel like you were on stage in the arena with Megadeth or ZZ Top. No small feat. Guitar Hero signaled the start of a new era of music games. Now, I remember first hearing about Rock Band. I had PlayStation 2 official magazine, and I opened it up, and there was these two guys in the denim, not blazers, biker jackets, and they were holding this toy control. I'm like, what is this? This is madness. What is this? And I started reading the article, and I thought, wait, amplitude with a guitar controller? This is crazy. I want it. And sure enough, I made my parents drive 35 miles to our nearest game retailer, and I bought it on day one. I'm starting to think it was actually maybe around my birthday. Now that I'm looking back, maybe I'll check the release date. But no, I got it home. It was in a big sort of a rectangular box. You pop it open. Here's your little toy guitar, and I started playing with the little strummer before we even turned on the console or anything, and I just kind of go click, 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 click. And I thought, oh, that's noisy. There's no way you're going to be able to hear that over the music. So we plug it in and we turn on the game and you start playing, and it was transformative. It's basically just like Justin says here. It really made you feel like you were a rock star, especially when you got to the end of a song. The crowd starts cheering and it brings up your score. It really does delve into something. Now, I was studying music at high school at the time. I just started high school, I think. I may be wrong there. But, you know, I had a long list of songs that I was already familiar with. So there wasn't as much a learning curve in terms of the songs. I already knew the rhythms. So I found myself going up to the harder difficulty very quickly. With that said, reaching, I believe the very last song I had to complete was Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne. And I had some friends over and they were watching me play it, and I was getting genuinely aggravated by it. Because at the end of the song there is a solo section which is very repetitive. And I just couldn't nail it. I'd get all the way, 5 minutes into the 6-minute song, and then just to fail right at the end because of this little repetition bit. And it was aggravating. I got so angry, I took the guitar controller off, I took my shirt off, this wee tubby boy, threw the shirt down, and I was like, I'm gonna do this! I fling it back on, and I just get angry with it. I get angry and I'm just playing, and the focus was intense. You'd think it was some kind of grand final at a gaming tournament, and the sense of relief and release when I got to the end of the song. I think I only done it, I'm sure Guitar Hero has the first Guitar Hero game has a 5-star system. I think I must have completed it with 3 stars, but I didn't care. I got to the end of that song. It was the most strenuous thing I've ever done with a PS2 up until that point, but I felt like a rock god. Anyway, back to the article. In 2006, Harmonix and Red Octane released Guitar Hero 2 for PlayStation 2, with an Xbox 360 version coming the following year. The game took off like a rocket, becoming the 5th best-selling game of 2006. Fueled by the success of the series, Red Octane and Harmonix became hot properties in the business world. Activision bought Red Octane in 2006, prior to the release of Guitar Hero 2. Next came the release of Guitar Hero Encore Rock the 80s, which was essentially an expansion pack to Guitar Hero 2. Tellingly, this was the last game that Harmonix and Red Octane would collaborate on. After meeting its contractual obligations on the Guitar Hero franchise, Harmonix was scooped up by Viacom's MTV Games, which effectively cut it off from working on any future Guitar Hero games. Harmonix had to forge a new path, so it decided to do something much bigger than Guitar Hero. This idea turned into Rock Band, a 2007 game that took the next logical step by expanding the instrument lineup to include drums, a microphone, in addition to guitar. A full Rock Band set came packaged in a tremendously large box that sold for a cringe-worthy price of $200. The thing is, people actually bought it, including yours truly. You couldn't walk into a Best Buy or GameStop without having to sidestep a towering stack of Rock Band boxes piled in the main foyers of the stores. These sets sold in crazy numbers, racking up 4 million sales in their first year. Do that math. The game became a centerpiece at parties and friendly gatherings, with gamers and non-gamers alike teaming up to rock out tracks like Soundgarden's Black Hole Sun, Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter, Nirvana's In Bloom, and Rush's Tom Sawyer. Me, me. Better yet, by now the music industry started to realise these games were moneymakers, so most of the tracks were original recordings rather than the cover versions that populated the original Guitar Heroes. Meanwhile, on the Guitar Hero side of things, Activision hired Tony Hawk Pro Skater developer Neversoft to keep the franchise alive. In 2007, they released the guitar-centric Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock, which Activision called the best-selling game of the year. Seeing the full band experience with Harmonix, that Harmonix delivered with Rock Band, however, Neversoft followed suit in 2008 with the release of Guitar Hero World Tour, a game that included vocals and drums in addition to guitars, plus 86 original versions of classic songs. I'll stop again there, sorry, I meant to stop just before we went to the Guitar Hero. Rock Band was another monumental thing. I mean, we're maybe talking 7 or 8 years after the original Guitar Hero at this point. And by this point, I was a young teen working in a video game retailer. And I had left temporarily because I was on a temporary contract. I left for a few months and then came back originally. The game released during that period in between. I still had connections. And two very lovely people called Gemma and Dane texted me the day it came in. And it wasn't due to release till the Friday. This must have been a Monday. They just said, it's here. So I couldn't drive at the time. I was like, Mum, take me to the store, please. I've got a very important delivery to pick up. And the box was huge, just as Justin was saying there. It was massive. Gemma tried to lift it out the back door of the retailer by herself. It was massive. But no, Rock Band, like, to come from Guitar Hero into that Rock Band experience, you know, I wasn't even fussed about the guitar. I let my friends play guitar. I wanted the drums, those big, loud, thrashy drums, because obviously it was hard plastic, so every time you hit it, it was like, and every time you're stomping on it, the amount of times my dad would shout up and say that's enough for tonight, because obviously my bedroom being upstairs and them being downstairs in the living room, it was very, my parents must have been thick-skinned. Thank you, Mum and Dad. But also, it was one of the first things that was seen as more of a platform than a game. I suppose it's one of the earliest examples of microtransactions and DLC. And to be honest, like, you were getting good value for your money. Every Tuesday, I think it was, they would release new songs on the store, and you'd get a pack of free songs for like £3.50. And that was that was a financial sink every Tuesday. I'm buying new songs for Rock Band, and I'm actually really disappointed. I've came back to Xbox after spending most of last generation on PS4. So on one hand, it's great because I've come to Xbox Series S. I've got all these Xbox One games that I've never ever touched that I can now play. But one of the big things touted was backwards compatibility, that you can go into a game library and re-download your old games, and lo and behold, Rock Band is not there, along with all the perks I've got. Now, I've still got my my Xbox 360 sitting in storage somewhere back there, so I could just fire it up and go and buy a cheap Rock Band set off eBay. I say cheaper, still go for quite a penny. It's a little bit evergreen, but it's niche now, so obviously those prices will inflate. But Rock Band, that was, I'm sure I peer pressured a lot of friends into playing it with me. Ryan, I just came over to hang out, I don't care. Pick up that guitar, we're playing. Anyway, I digress. So back to the article, talking about World Tour and the Guitar Hero side. By the time World Tour came out, however, Harmonix had released Rock Band 2, with 84 original recordings, plus 1,000 tracks available for digital download. I should also mention that they were cross-compatible. You could export your songs into Rock Band 2, if I recall. Both games sold well through the holiday season of 2008. But now that the genre was more popular than ever, the two companies were releasing AAA peripheral-based music games. Things started to get out of control. Activision began pumping out Guitar Hero games at an incredible clip, with only minor innovations between releases. Harmonix did the same with Rock Band games, although most of its installments honed the core concepts and added new layers. The frenzy of the music games releases couldn't last, thanks mostly to the sheer number of games put out in the market. Green Day got a Rock Band game, so did the Beatles, and oddly Lego. Aerosmith got a Guitar Hero game, followed by Metallica and Van Halen. Both franchises came to iOS and PSP, with Rock Band Unplugged, while the Nintendo DS got 4 Guitar Hero games and a plug-in peripheral of its own, not to mention thousands of downloadable songs that are released between the two franchises. Brief note on the DS version there, what he was talking about was it's kind of like it felt like a cassette. If you're holding a cassette like that, an old tape cassette, and it had 4 little buttons on top, you plugged in your DS that way. I never played it personally, but I imagine you'd get a fair bit of cramp holding it like that. You're not actually like holding it like a real guitar. I passed on that. I had a DS, but I passed on that. Activision released Guitar Hero 5 and DJ Hero with a turntable peripheral in 2009, followed by DJ Hero 2 in 2010. For its part, Harmonix was less prolific with the Rock Band series, but it also kept the games coming. Between the two franchises, a wobbling, faltering, unsustainable number of games were released between 2005 and 2010. Sales were great for a while, but it took a steep dive toward the end, and it was too much, too fast. Music game sales dropped by nearly 50% in 2009. The following year was even more brutal, with a 67% decline in sales. Activision's Band Hero came out in 2009, with a track list that was more meant to appeal to a wider array of fans. Rock Band 3 came out in 2010 with a pro mode that could actually teach you how to play guitar and keyboard. Those were fine ideas, but by the time the world had moved on. Over the course of 2010, just about everything in the music game business fell apart. In February, Activision shuttered Red Octane. In December, MTV's parent company Viacom sold Harmonix. I should point, there was actually a bit of legal issues with that. Now, I'm not fully up to date on that, so I won't go too much into that. But apparently it wasn't a clean break. In early 2011, Activision announced it was done making Guitar Hero games. The craze was over. But what a phenomenon! Just about everyone under the age of 40 who attended a social gathering between 2005 and 2010 got a taste of Guitar Hero or Rock Band. These games got people who hadn't touched a control in years to stand in front of a TV, have a blast playing video games. They even got people to start taking music lessons. The music game popularity spike was incredible while it lasted. And he hit the nail on the head there. It was overbloat that killed the music genre. Now, I'm saying it killed the music genre. Harmonix are still around today, and they're still making games. And I'll go into that in a little bit here. But yeah, it was too much too fast. Additionally, I wasn't entirely sold on this idea of Harmonix putting out new games when they had such a good platform, not a game, a platform. I would be more than happy just sticking with Rock Band and just keep those songs coming for Rock Band 1. I don't actually remember playing Rock Band 3. I don't remember that. I think I must have just stuck with Guitar Hero 2 because, again, the downloadable songs you can get were cross-compatible between the three games. You weren't restricted. So I think I just stuck with Rock Band 2. I may be wrong, but I don't remember trying out the pro mode. I feel like, being a musician myself, I would have tried out the pro mode. But who knows? I'm sure by 2009 I'll be 19, so yeah, that's when the drinking started. So there was probably a lot from that time that I don't quite remember. So yeah, as I've said, Harmonix are still around today. They went on to make Dance Central for the CNET, for the Xbox, and I tried that and it was actually really, really good. I never played any of the sequels because, you know, once you played one, you knew what the rest were like. Connect, that's a story we need to discuss at some point here. But they've done a lot of work for Connect from Microsoft. Microsoft obviously footing the bill and keeping them afloat probably after the very sudden crash of the genre that they specialised in. I mean, the name Harmonix alone, they're not going to go start making first-person shooters. Ironically, I think they did. But it was a music-based one. I can't recall the name of it now. But yeah, so Harmonix are still around, and most recent, I discussed the Amplitude reboot not too long ago. But I've got a little bit of a paraphernalia here to show you. I don't know if that's the correct word or not. This is something they brought out 3 years ago called Drop Mix. Now, it was made in collaboration with Hasbro, and the idea is it's controlled by your smartphone or your tablet, and you sit here, and it's a card game. Now, the original game came with 60 cards in there. Each card represents a track. A track of a track is what I was about to say. So, for example, this is Evanescence here, Bring Me to Life. We all know that song. That song was #1 here in the UK somehow. Anyway, so this is actually the guitar for Bring Me to Life. So if I had the game running and stuff like that, if I put that down, it would start just playing the guitar from that song. Over here, let's say we've got The Weeknd. This is the drums, let's say. You put that down, and then it's playing the drums and the drums for The Weeknd, but playing the guitar for Evanescence, and it'll mix it that way. So it's a card game where you earn points and stuff like that. The premise is you're mixing and matching parts of different songs to form a remix, basically. Now, from what I can tell, this didn't sell very well because they discontinued it pretty quickly, and the booster packs that released, because, you know, it didn't have full songs like that Evanescence, but for example, you only got the guitar and the vocals, you didn't get the drums or any of the extra bits. But the idea is you get those in booster packs. But I think that's where the issue came in, is booster packs. Like, I know it still works for things like Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, and, you know, if you ever want to discuss loot box mechanics, I've got an interesting take on that. So as well as introducing that chase mechanic, I think that combined with the fact that these were probably quite expensive to make, they must have some kind of a little chip here. These do feel a bit thicker than regular playing cards, but it needs something to register the back of the song. So I'm assuming if I was to peel one of these apart, I would find something like a thin strip, you know, kind of like what you get on the base of an amiibo or something like that. But, you know, I only actually got this a few days ago, and it's a fun little thing, and it kind of paved the way for what their next what their next game was going to be, which was Fuser, which just came out a few months ago, actually. Now, I've not played Fuser. Well, I have played Fuser. I've played the demo for Fuser, and I've not jumped on it just yet. I'm waiting for it to go on deep discount. Only reason being is that it's not a game I see myself sitting down and binge playing. It's a game I'd probably play for 5 minutes a day. Just, quick resume on the Xbox. I've got a spare 5 minutes before I need to go to work. Let's fire up Fuser for a minute. And the game is basically the same mechanics as what I just described here for Dropmix. It's taking bits of songs and putting them together to form new songs, and it didn't seem like there was much beyond what you're being offered in that demo. Obviously, there was only 3 or 4 songs to pull from in that demo, and it probably had about 50 songs, I think, maybe 80. Can't remember. Pardon me. But yeah, the proposition that was being put up front wasn't something I was diving on. Notice that, again, I kind of lean on more the metal side, and there's a few metal songs in there. They had, like, Rage Against the Machine was in the demo, for example. But, mixing that with Cardi B and stuff like that, and just, it's a bit weird. But as we're coming to the end of this topic, I do want to say that I still love Harmonix. I have, it's like an old lover, I guess you could say. It's, you still got the memories, and you want them to succeed in whatever they're doing now in life. And I hope that Harmonix does have some kind of resurgence in the coming years. I think the main thing that's holding them back, though, is, let's have no misconceptions, music genre of video games is niche now. Even Just Dance by Ubisoft, they bring out a new game every year, but it's hardly selling gangbusters, at least not enough for me to take notice. But it is a very niche genre, and I think for a niche genre to survive, you need the backing and the publicity that comes with streaming. Now, YouTube and Twitch. YouTube and Twitch. Obviously, there's a very sketchy history in terms of copyright claims and stuff like that. And, with a music game, you need the music there. And, a lot of video games offer streamer-friendly modes. You can enable the options, which disables the music or takes out music that doesn't have the rights to be broadcast over streaming. But you can't do that with a game that's entirely a music game. You need all of that content there. So I don't know what the resolution is, but I think, until platforms such as YouTube and Twitch have got something in place to allow the fair use of music in certain situations, I think music genre is, it's a niche that's not necessarily going to thrive. Don't get me wrong, I have seen smaller channels streaming Fuser and things like that, but you'll never see the big ones. It's just too much of a risk, Why play this game that may get me a strike on my channel when I can go and play this game, which, is safe for me to play? And it's a shame because, it's not, there's no direct route to get that resolved. Do you speak directly to the platforms? Do you speak to the license holders for the music? Now, again, my background is in music, so I think what Harmonix really need to do is, when trying to license songs for future games, they need to either negotiate or request that the rights also extend to the broadcast in a digital space. Now, they'd have to be very cautious with terminology, because that, right now, the way I said it there mistakenly makes it sound like they want the rights to, put it over Spotify and music streaming services. So I guess the language there needs a bit, but basically, they need to get the rights in place when they put the songs into their games, that platforms know when they're doing the metadata and the content ID tags, they know that these games have music that have already been licensed and they shouldn't be copyright claimed on the music basis. Again, I'm not a video game developer, I don't know the exacts around that, but based on what I know about the music industry, it's just a case of communicating with those record labels and securing those rights. The only issue is, the more rights you want, the more the money goes up. And one of the reasons why Amplitude, what I was speaking about earlier, had kind of a more limited thing, was because, again, it was a Kickstarter. They didn't know what songs were and weren't going to make it in there, so they had to go for some smaller artists, and I think a lot of the artists, I may be wrong, but I'm sure a lot of the artists are actually in-house at Harmonix for Amplitude there. So again, the more rights they try to get there, the more the production goes up, and again, that's a big risk when you're a niche genre. But anyway, I digress. I really do wish Harmonix the best going forward. It's a shame it does seem to have had more misses than hits in recent years. I'm hoping that Fuser did sell well. I've not heard anything about it. Again, you know, maybe other people like me didn't see the value up front there. I will absolutely buy in feedback to you when I do get to play Fuser, because don't get me wrong, the demo was incredibly fun. I had a lot of time. I had a lot of time. I had one song. I had a lot of fun with it. Again, just up front, you know, asking for £60, I think it was, or £50 for 5 minutes a day. It's not good value for me personally. Up front there. So best of luck, Harmonix. And for today, folks, that's the end of our inaugural show here. Again, a bit on the shorter side here. I went into things like Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk there, just to give you a bit of background into me. I mean, you've already learned I've worked for retailers and I've got a bit of background in music, so I hope you've got to know me a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and tell you my life story. I was born on a cold winter night in October 1990. But yeah, let's just bookend with, again, just a little bit about this show. So, if you like what I've had to say here, by all means, you can drop me a comment in the comments below, or let me know a little bit of feedback. But if you've got an informed opinion about anything we've discussed here, be it the OLED Switch, Harmonix, I mean, do you have memories of getting Guitar Hero when it first came out, if you're old enough? Have you never really heard about Guitar Hero until this point? Feel free to write in the emails at the bottom of the screen here. Now, again, for the time capsule mentality here, if this channel does keep going and you're watching this a few years after the fact, that email might not be valid anymore, so maybe just double check some of the more recent videos just to see. Because I'm hoping that as the channel grows, I can maybe get an actual website up with an actual contact form you can use to send in your letters. But for now, if you've got anything you want to send in, please send it in to the address at the bottom of the screen just now. Again, if you've played Tony Hawk's, if you hated Tony Hawk's, feel free to write in, let me know why, and I will read your letters out on air, and we'll have a little civil discourse around that. But other than that, folks, again, my name's Ryan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, and I'm really happy if you've stuck through to the end of this video. It does mean a lot. It is our inaugural episode, and again, the nerves are a little bit on edge here right now, so I'm looking forward to looking forward to watching this back later on, see how I did, and I will try and get a microphone for the next episode. I'm hoping to do these weekly, as I was saying at the start of the show here, so look out for this, usually on the weekends. I haven't got a specific date or anything like that at the moment. Again, we'll start scheduling when we transition to a live format. So if you've liked this video and you do want to see when these videos go up, feel free to click the like and subscribe and all the other things that we are promoted to do here on the YouTube. We'll also get some social media channels up and on the go very shortly, so keep an eye out for those, and we'll probably have some details in the next episode. But for now, from here in Scotland, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Congregation. Take care.